Hey everybody, welcome to today's Wireside Chats brought to you by Ivology. I am very lucky to have with me today one of the smartest guys in the room, usually in any room that you end up in, Matt Jolly. Matt Jolly is actually one of our solutions architects, our senior solutions architect in the IP networking and even some of the security world as well. Matt comes from a very strong background in Cisco and extremely strong subject matter expertise in Brocade networking as well, especially in the VDX side. And I thought that I would bring Matt in on a conversation that has been something that I think has been a conflict ever since iSCSI started to come along. So the topic on this one is the storage protocol war that seems to be going on. And maybe war is a strong word. There's certainly a lot of very sweeping opinions on which protocol is better. I think, Matt, you and I, we talk to enough IT professionals every day where we get these sweeping statements that Fibre Channel is by far and away the only and the best, and everything else is an attempt to become the Holy Grail. And then we hear iSCSI folks say that Fibre Channel is dead and it's going away. And I think that you have to have your hands in a lot of design opportunities like Matt and I do to realize that this is one of those answers where there really is going to be the best fit for a given scenario. The beauty of what some of the protocols bring to this is that economy makes things more available, and then of course technology makes those things perform arguably as fast as other things. So what I wanted to do was just kind of go through a real quick rundown.
Right.
I wanted to start with Fibre Channel because iSCSI seems to have a lot more buzz surrounding it. Fibre Channel's been around since the 1 gig days. They keep doubling it, 1, 2, 4, 8. Now there's 16.
32 coming out soon.
32 is going to come out soon, so we're all going to have reasons to do another refresh on our Fibre Channel network. The positives on Fibre Channel that I think nobody is going to really argue with is that it is theoretically or physically impossible to be a lower latency storage protocol than Fibre Channel. And I can just feel there's a million people ready to interrupt that statement. Let's just talk physics for a minute, right? I just have less encapsulation going on, and I have less disturbance from my network. And I know I can tell that you're ready already to jump all over that one. So that's one is the Fibre Channel piece as far as the latency goes. The second one is that it is much easier to secure, right? And I think you've heard this one too. I think we chose the word easier to secure because I don't feel, and you probably share, it's any more secure than an appropriately configured IP network. But let's go with easier, more easily secured. And then the last one was it's less disruptive to a person's data network or to the rest of their network. And obviously the answer to that is yes. If I put 400,000 pounds of sand in my car, that will be disruptive to my vehicle. Maybe I need to reconsider the vehicle for that. So those are usually the arguments we hear from the Fibre Channel side. So why don't you go ahead and give me some of your input on on some of those statements of Fibre Channel. So to some way agree with the latency. Zero latency discussion with Fibre Channel.
Well, no, I mean, absolutely that used to be the case. The new technologies with iSCSI switches allows for extremely low latency. I mean, you get things like Arista switches, with next to no latency at all, just because of the way the architectures work. Super fast ASICs, cut-through switching, things like that. iSCSI is a real contender at this point. So I mean, classically, Fibre Channel's had an audit. It's a very mature technology that keeps growing. A lot of places won't go away from it. There's good reasons not to. I mean, it's obviously very fast, very efficient, very secure. It's inherently secure by design. You don't have it on the same network. But what you're seeing is a lot of people are embracing iSCSI because there's things that you can do with it now. Speed, security, ease of deployment, flexibility, and some other stuff that we'll talk about at the end of this that makes it a real player in there. There's cost, benefits and things like that on there. So I mean, we see both sides of that, right? Where somebody would say, no, we can't do Fibre Channel. It's kind of like the telephone wars where you had the old analog guys versus, hell no, we're not going to do voice over IP. And they fought tooth and nail to not go to that route. And now you're seeing a lot of voice over IP stuff.
Right.
But in that same vein, voice over IP can be done very wrong, and they're like, see, it should have been analog phones. They work better. So it's the same argument, right? Fiber channel is a fantastic technology, but if you look at what people are doing with their network, that's where you make that real decision. You know, there's kind of.
I want to focus on that because I think you know a large part of what brought this discussion to fruit is even some internal dialogue we have back and forth, and that's healthy, right? It's always good for the customer. For us to challenge each other.
Right.
I still feel that, from a physics perspective, that's the one stake that Fibre Channel can put in the ground is that just inherently, even though there are lightning fast switches out there, I'm still doing less to the information that's passing through, and it's still lossless, and I know you're going to have a response to that. So it is, in my eyes, going to be impossible for it to get to the speed. But I think the other argument is iSCSI and switching networks and some of the architectures that can help support storage traffic actually make it so that they are able to perform at a level so close to Fibre Channel that maybe we couldn't even measure the difference. And at that point, why am I spending the extra money, right?
Yeah.
And we're not here to talk people out of Fibre Channel, folks. We're not trying to talk people off of it. We put it in very often. It does present a lot of benefits just from the perspective of if we have disparate groups, if we have a networking group and we have a storage group, each has their own budget. The storage folks typically are going to have an opinion about the network as far as the network guys go, and then of course if there are ever problems where they have to reach over the aisle, that's a challenge that presents a management challenge, for anybody that has to run those departments, and then the disparate budgeting. I've got budget for a Fibre Channel network, but my networking isn't happening for another 2 or 3 years, or maybe even more. So you're telling me that some networks may not be able to support iSCSI traffic inherently because they're already highly utilized. So Fibre Channel might be the right answer there, right? Yeah. When we get over to the benefits of iSCSI, which we've kind of touched on a little bit, one of the things that comes to mind, before you even get technical about it, when you get into it from a planning perspective or from a project planning perspective, it's definitely much more affordable for a customer to get into shared storage or upgrade their shared storage because they can utilize something that's already there, right? Versus considering the Fibre Channel. There's an often overlooked expense with Fibre Channel, which is the HBAs that have to go into the machines.
We can argue that, though, too.
Well, because there's iSCSI HBAs now.
Well, not only that, though, there's also converged HBAs, which we can probably get into that a little bit, too. I mean, that's what makes it really tricky. It's all about application and end-user experience. So that totally blurs the lines now where even if on the same network, all right, my storage guys want to have Fibre Channel, but my network guys want to have iSCSI, guess what? I can roll it across the same infrastructure. My HBAs or host bus adapters can be converged, which means they can either do Fibre Channel or native Ethernet, or even Fibre Channel over Ethernet across the same device. So that's where guys like us come in to help kind of unclutter that. Say, what in the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, and if you have this is another argument against iSCSI was it's utilizing some of the resources on my host machines.
Right.
And now there's an answer for that, which is offloading initiators onto network cards. So now, just like on a Fibre Channel HBA, it's occurring on the iSCSI HBA. So I think one of the things we want to talk about, though, is cases where iSCSI presents a real advantage. And I think more interesting to the rest of the group, to those that are going to view this, what have we seen recently? And when I say recently, only 2 years ago did we start to really hear stuff about Ethernet fabric.
Yep.
And I know that when I started studying it, it smelled exactly like Fibre Channel.
Yep.
So we're starting to steal from the Fibre Channel protocol, right?
Yep.
And put this. Can you maybe give us a little bit of color on the Ethernet fabric? And I think that we're probably going to end up talking about the VDX.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to, right? Fabric. You're kind of the leaders. Yeah.
So VDX. So cool thing about Brocade is they own Fibre Channel market.
They invented it.
Yeah, they invented it. I think there was only 1 or 2 players that have popped up, and only one is still, McData come and gone. Still you have Cisco playing around in the Fibre Channel game a little bit with some limitations in comparison to, some of the other Brocade series. But we stole from it, right, in the iSCSI world. And one of the problems that we run into with storage is we still have to deal with spanning tree. We have to deal with all the networking issues and manage around them. Only now I have these big giant blocks of information traveling down the highway that I now have to manage and separate off. So maybe you could walk us through, some of the best practices with iSCSI that'll help us maybe reveal the potential to be at the speed and latency of Fibre Channel.
Yeah. So when you get into the best practices, I mean, some of the pitfalls that people run into when they try to just deploy iSCSI and can give it a bad rep is we're getting latency, links aren't coming up right, we've got dropped packets, all this other stuff going on. So without even talking about Ethernet fabric, let's just talk a straight, trunk
best practices.
Going from an iSCSI switch to a host, right? You want to make sure things like jumbo frames are enabled. You want to make sure that you've got flow control. These switches can do hardware flow control, which will match up to your HBAs or your virtual mix, VMware supports it, things like that. You want to make sure that your speed and duplex settings are correctly set, right? Those are all really easy things to set up, but people don't know about that. I mean, we run into this all the time where we're having to fix that, and then all of a sudden it goes from this network sucks to, holy crap, look at the throughput on this. Holy crap, it works. And then if you get into Ethernet fabrics, and we can do things like dynamically add links and, kind of back what you were saying earlier, Ethernet fabrics, if you take the fabric part, that's the same exact thing that Fibre Channel had. It's derived directly from that. So what these engineers have done, let's pick on Brocade for a second, they invented Fibre Channel, they bought Foundry and got all their IP stuff, and their whole intention was to roll out a product like the VDX, which is what they have, and marry all the Fibre Channel legacy in with all the cool features that you can do with Ethernet. So you can do all the routing features and things like that.
That's a great point, Matt. Right? Routing Fibre Channel is a pain. Right. In dealing with it. Right? You can buy expensive FCIP routers.
Yep.
There's some with a lot of vendors I can't even synchronously replicate over FCIP. So I'm kind of limited on the features I get from my storage array. iSCSI is a routable protocol.
Right. Well, and you can do what they call data center bridging, or DCB. That's a powerful feature of that. An emerging technology is called VXLAN, where you can extend data centers across miles. So yeah, iSCSI allows you to do a lot of that stuff without having to have an FCIP, routed gateway in essence. And you can tunnel, Fibre Channel over those Ethernet links. And we know that there is latency over a distance, but engineers are doing some amazing things with that. I mean, as it matures more, you're going to see some cool stuff going on with that as well.
So if I have some legacy Fibre Channel going on, the concern I have a 4 gig network right now. I don't want to rip and replace it. Or if we're looking at a network rebuild, this is iSCSI can present an option there, right?
Yeah, I mean, and whatever vendor, you can do it with Cisco Nexus.
We put our new iSCSI storage solution in, and we still have our old one, but we just tunnel that through.
Well, you have cool technologies too. Okay, we're worried about security. Well, there's a cool service provider technology called VRF, or virtual routing and forwarding, where you can logically isolate, different pieces of your network. They don't even know that they exist with each other. And instead of having to have that physical separation, you have a logical separation. It's the same thing, but just with less physical boxes. It's the same idea as when you virtualize servers. People used to be scared to death that how is this going to be good performance or secure. Well, we're doing the same thing with networks now, and we're really just kind of breaking it all down into just stuff living in software with security between it.
So let's touch on, but Fibre Channel's lossless.
So are Ethernet fabrics.
Right. So I wanted to give you some opportunity to sort of, because I don't know very much.
Well, it's a fair argument. All right. I mean, if iSCSI on the face of it is native Ethernet, and native Ethernet is not lossless. TCP/IP, that protocol, was not built for reliability. It was built for getting stuff moved really, really fast.
From one place.
So you have things like retransmissions and things like that. Well, lossless Ethernet, because it marries the fabric stuff, from Fibre Channel with Ethernet, then it has stuff that goes on under the hood that prevents retransmission problems and absolutely ensures, just like Fibre Channel does, that the data gets where it needs to. I mean, we all understand that your storage and stuff can't have loss. Even servers take all your multicast stuff too. They're designed with ultimate performance in mind. So they're very specialized for what they do. Oh, by the way, they just happen to have all the cool Ethernet underpinnings. So your stuff going down to servers and storage is going to be handled differently than switch to switch or switch to another network on that. Backups can be the same way, but there's buffering and other things that you can do there. So when we say lossless Ethernet, doesn't lose frames or packets or anything. It really doesn't, because it can't. There's the understanding that it's got to be as reliable as Fibre Channel. Best way to do that is, we educate customers by showing them, here's how it works, and here's what it does, and show them the tests. I know in our labs we'll be doing bake-offs between Fibre Channel and iSCSI, so we can really show it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Kind of put that to rest, and it's, at the end of the day, it comes down to knowledge. People are very comfortable with years of experience with the technology. Getting them to change to another one can be, difficult, but that's where guys like us really can help out with that, and help them at the end of the day decide which way they go.
So some quick takeaways on this as we wrap things up. So first of all, those of you that voted for Fibre Channel, I'm one of them. Just so you know, I still hold an opinion, that Fibre Channel is amazingly fast, and that there is some value in keeping it separated from a network. But that's coming from someone that's not a network guy. So for me, it's natural for me to take well, I know what I'm getting. I know how to design a Fibre Channel network and stand up these zones and create, abide by the rules that are required, which are weird and different in comparison to the networking world. And I still think that, if money is of no object, you have to kind of start with the argument of why wouldn't I want Fibre Channel, even though you probably...
Here's a secret.
I sell Fibre Channel too. I know you do. I know you do. But there's a reason why we're both sitting here, right? Sure. Because we have opinions on it. Yep. I'm definitely a big fan of iSCSI. It's helped enable getting this technology that's very important into a lot of small business, and now we're seeing it even in the enterprise. Yep. Probably one of the biggest arguments I get into now with IT folks is talking about how in the world someone has a 90,000 IOP storage solution and is comfortable putting it on an iSCSI network. It's hard for people to compute. You and I just recently had a customer down in Palmetto that stood up a VDX fabric just to deal with the storage traffic and the I/O, and the intense I/O is going to come down on the storage array. So there's definitely some things we want to watch on, right? So from Fibre Channel, obviously zoning rules are probably the biggest that people run into. On why things can't talk to other things.
Yeah, so you set up your imports and eports right. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you have to look at.
You really want to pay attention to some of those rules on the Fibre Channel side. You've always budgeted too little for your Fibre Channel network. I know this from HBAs. For some reason, everybody's become much more comfortable with dual-port HBAs instead of two single-port HBAs. So we really want to keep track. Those HBAs are $1,500 a pop, give or take. So it's definitely very expensive. Those are the uh-ohs with Fibre Channel. On the iSCSI side, right, and I want you to jump in and correct me. Yep. Number one, know your network before you drop 4 ports of 10 gig storage on your network, right? Would you agree that in the best situation, we want a physically separated network? I know you can say arguably it's not necessary.
You could do it either way. I mean, at the end of the day, it all comes down to your application, right? And that's where we're going to help out with that. We're not biased either way. But yeah, I mean, best practices says, you want to have a good mesh network. You want to multi-home all your connections. If you don't have the budget to actually physically separate it, there are ways you can do that, and the switches are very capable of it. But yeah, typically you'll see they're isolated, and then maybe you've got a connection that goes through a firewall, and anything that needs to go outbound for whatever management or whatever on that can go out to the network. So yeah, you can still do the same design. And if you isolate your storage networks and your server networks from the rest of your actual network, even with the iSCSI switches, does come out less expensive.
Yeah, considerably less expensive, especially when we're looking at the hosts that are involved.
Well, look at your HBAs you were mentioning. So even a converged HBA like a QLogic is $180 versus a native Fibre Channel dual port, which is $1,500. You look at your connection types. To my knowledge, Fibre Channel still has to use fiber, and you have to use those little special SFPs, which are expensive. Well, you can use direct attach on a 10 gig, 1 gig and 10 gig stuff, or even 40 gig. Yeah. That's like $150 for a connection. It's amazing the difference in cost and the kind of economies of scale on that.
So you definitely need to know whether your network is prepared for the workload of storage. All too often, we see vendors that aren't represented by a VAR or by a reseller with a trusted advisor in the middle. A lot of them will say, "Oh, you're fine. We'll just tell you this storage solution, iSCSI is fine. We put it in there, and then we get phone calls on how to tune or fix the network."
Get a good network assessment first.
You really do. You need to really make sure that your network is prepared for that. The second piece is obviously we want to separate the network. I feel physical separation is definitely something you've got to evaluate. We definitely have many customers that are just VLAN'd out, and it's working perfectly fine.
Again, it depends on your application, man. That's
the last point I wanted to make. Right, know your workload. You have to know and separate those workloads. We don't always want to assume that all the workloads are the same. And you have some workloads that are write once and read many, and you have some workloads that are highly transactional. And you may even find you need to tune those frame sizes. Not always is it going to be a jumbo frame. Sometimes it's highly transactional with small bits of information. And in that case, maybe smaller frames, or if there's traffic issues, because we always have to tune.
Yeah.
Isn't that one of the benefits of iSCSI is that you can tune it. You can retune them.
Well, I mean, you have the two biggest things. You've got your MTU size, which is your window size for your packets. Typically, like if you're taking a VMware environment, it's almost always going to be set at 9,000, and you'll set your switch to 9216, and you might say, well, wait a minute, that's going to be an MTU mismatch. It's not, because with that, you'll have the Ethernet overhead, and there's things you can do on your network. You want that little bit of overhead on your switch.
That's a great point. Okay.
So, and the reason they can do that is they have deep, what they call port buffers, for buffering stuff.
That's another important one too, isn't it? We can't go with chintzy port buffers on an iSCSI.
No, you're gonna, they're high-end, high-performance switches. They're fast ASICs, deep port buffers. You want to make sure not only your frame size, but also for your storage, you're looking at your block sizes, right? Are you doing 4K blocks, 8K, 16K? There's
all going to impact your tuning.
Yep, that translates back up to what your frame size is going in and out of the switch. But yeah, you can tune all that stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do. It's different than the buffer credits and things that you had on a Fibre Channel type switch. But on Ethernet fabrics, there's things you can do in the back end there as well inside of your fabric. So.
Well, you may be turning me around on it, right? I still feel very comfortable with Fibre Channel, and I think a lot of you folks that are watching, maybe what we need to do is, if we're looking at iSCSI, Matt's here, right? We can look at your network. We're certainly going to be honest and let you know whether we feel you're prepared to take on the workload that you describe. If you don't know what your workload is, and you don't know the state of your network, stay away from iSCSI. As a matter of fact, I stay away from any storage until you get that figured out, right?
Yep.
Folks, I really appreciate everyone putting together the time. We're looking for a lot of dialogue on this, so please be sure to post up either on YouTube or on Google Hangouts. Pay close attention to some of the stuff we had in our background with our Twitter handles, and also some of our Wireside stuff. So check out all our Wireside channels as much as you can. So until then, folks, please post up. Give us your opinion on the blog. And maybe we'll have a second session with this, maybe even have some guests on to kind of deepen the discussion. Matt, thanks a lot for making it. I really appreciate it. And folks, We'll see you again on the Wireside.